All right, folks, last lecture. This is cranial nerves, and this is basically lab stuff, but we'll run through them anyway. So you need to memorize all 12 cranial nerves, and the first thing you should do is review your Roman numerals because these are written with Roman numerals. And what I just done is down the left side, I did Roman numerals 1 through 6, and now I'm doing Roman numerals 7 through 12 because there's 12 pairs of cranial nerves. 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, a couple of different sayings to help you. One saying is, our old oxidized trusty truck acts funny, very good vehicle anyhow. Our old oxidized trusty truck acts funny, very good vehicle anyhow. And what that stands for is the cranial nerves: olfactory, optic, oculomotor, trochlear, trigeminal, abducens, facial, vestibulocochlear, glossopharyngeal, vagus, accessory. Some people call that the spinal accessory. So sometimes this starts with an S. Some people call this the spinal accessory. And hypoglossal. So these are the 12 cranial nerves. And then there's another saying, and you have to know the Roman numerals, and you have to know the names, and you have to know what they do. So you need to know a lot about these cranial nerves. And there's another saying that goes along with this. Well, actually, let me get a fresh sheet of paper. So what we have is, let me do the Roman numerals again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hope I left myself enough space. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And the other saying gives us a gross function. And what I mean by gross function is an approximate function like motor or sensory or both. It doesn't tell us exactly where it goes or exactly what it's receiving, but it does give us an overall function. And that saying is like this. First of all, let's put the letter of the cranial nerve down. Olfactory, optic, ocular motor, trochlear, trigeminal, abducens, facial, vestibulocochlear, glossopharyngeal, vagus, spinal accessory or just accessory, and then hypoglossal. All right, so now the other saying is this. Some say marry money, but my brother says bad business marrying money. Now, everywhere you see an S, it's sensory. Everywhere you see an M, it's motor. Everywhere you see a B, it's both. So this shows you which ones are purely sensory, which ones are motor, which ones are purely motor, which ones are both sensory and motor. So that helps you with that. So using these two sayings, our old oxidized trusty truck acts funny, very good vehicle anyhow, get you started in memorizing the names of the cranial nerves. You must also be able to do Roman numerals 1 through 12. And then using the saying, some say marry money, but my brother says bad business marrying money, tells you whether it's sensory, motor, or mixed, or both. So you can start off with that. But ultimately, you still have to sit down and memorize these cranial nerves. And in lab, you're going to have to be able to point to these cranial nerves and look at them and say what they are. And we're going to do that in lab. So You're going to have to recognize the cranial nerves on the brain model, plus you're going to have to memorize the cranial nerves, what number they are, and what they do. So that's what you'll be doing. And we'll just run through these real quick. Cranial nerve number 1 is the olfactory nerve. That's the sense of smell. That is a sensory nerve that does not go through the thalamus. It does not go through the thalamus. I know I told you 90% of all sensory input goes through the thalamus. This is part of that 10% that doesn't, right here. The optic nerve, cranial nerve number 2, comes from the eye, and you can see that it does have an optic chiasm where it crosses over. And you can see that it goes to the lateral geniculate nuclei, right here and here. And then it goes to the visual cortex, which is the occipital lobe. And you can see that. So that's cranial nerve number 2. Cranial nerve number, I think 3, 4, and 5 are on here. Yeah, 3, 4, and 5 are on here. So first of all, 2 is on here again, by the way. You can see optic nerve right here. You can see the optic chiasma right there. This is the oculomotor nerve. All right, you can see the oculomotor nerve. It's going to some muscles of your eyeball. It helps to move your eyeball. All right. It also goes to the ciliary body. You can actually see the ciliary ganglia right here. Now what the ciliary body does, it changes the shape of your lens. So for close vision or far vision. So you can see that. You can also see cranial nerve number 4 right here. It's the trochlear nerve. The trochlear nerve goes to the superior oblique muscle of the eye. Matter of fact, this little stirrup of connective tissue right there is called the trochlea. And the trochlear nerve is what innervates the muscle running through that trochlea. Here's the superior oblique muscle. Here's the trochlea, and that's the trochlear nerve. So when we do special senses, you're going to have to learn that trochlea, and now you can see that the trochlear nerve hits the superior oblique muscle. The trigeminal nerve is number 5, and it's showing you here that it's cut. The trigeminal nerve has 3 main branches, and I think I have a better picture of the trigeminal anyway, so I'll wait till I get to it. It shows you all 3 branches. So that's 3 and 4, oculomotor and trochlear. And here we go. What we have is we have a big trigeminal nerve right here. Here's my trigeminal nerve. And then it has 3 main branches. It has the ophthalmic branch going to the eye. It has the maxillary branch going to the upper lip. And it has the mandibular branch going to the lower lip. Now this is where herpes simplex 1 hangs out. And this is why you get cold sores, either on your upper lip or your lower lip, or you could actually get it on the cornea of your eye, and that wouldn't be good. It causes ophthalmic keratitis, herpetic herpes keratitis, which is when the herpes virus goes to the cornea of your eye. But the virus hangs out here in the trigeminal nerve, then travels down the nerve, and can cause a cold sore on your upper lip, or travels down the mandibular branch and causes a cold sore on your lower lip. And you can see that right there, how these could happen. All right, that's the trigeminal nerve. Now we have the facial nerve. The facial nerve has 5 main branches to it, and I think I have a better picture. Yes, right here. You can see the 5 main branches to the facial nerve right here. You can see the temporal branch, you can see the zygomatic branch, the buccal branch or the mouth, the mandibular branch or the mandible, and the cervical branch or the neck. These are the 5 branches of the facial nerve. So let's go back. This facial nerve has 5 branches to it. I want to show you one branch right here, right here. It goes right over your tympanic membrane, your eardrum, and it's actually called the chorda tympani. Chorda tympani, and it's and it travels with. By the way, that's the chorda tympani nerve, and that's part of the facial nerve, as you can see here. All right, you can see that. You can see that right here. All right, but it's also with the. By the way, why did we skip? Why did we skip abducens, or did we? Well, let me just say that's with the trigeminal that they combine there. But do we skip abducens? Here's the trigeminal, and we skipped abducens. Huh, interesting. Anyway, we skipped the abducens and went right to facial, which is 7. I'm not sure why we skipped abducens unless we covered it back here. We did not cover it back there, although it is right here. Here's the abducens. Now what the abducens does, and I'm sorry this is a little off now, the abducens abducts the eye. The abducens abducts the eye. So it goes to the lateral rectus muscle of the eye. So the ocular motor, 3 hits muscles of the eye. So ocular motor hits muscles of the eye. The trochlear nerve, number 4, hits the superior oblique muscle of the eye, and it goes through that little connective tissue called the trochlea. So that moves the eye. The trigeminal nerve certainly goes to, it has 3 main branches and it's going all over the face, but it certainly goes to the eye. And that's 5, trigeminal is 5, and 6 is the abducens, and that abducts the eye or hits the lateral rectus muscle. And then we got to the facial nerve, number 7, and we said that the facial nerve had 5 branches to it that you can see there. So right here, these are facial nerve, cranial nerve number 7. All right, this is 8, vestibulocochlear. Yes, it is. So you can see the vestibular branch of the nerve right here coming from your vestibule or your sense of balance. You can see the cochlear branch of the nerve right here, which comes from your cochlea, the sense of hearing. They come together to make the vestibulocochlear nerve right there, which does balance and hearing. So this is a purely sensory cranial nerve number 8, vestibulocochlear nerve. 9 is glossopharyngeal, and the glossopharyngeal nerve, you can see that right here. The glossopharyngeal nerve, it's involved in heart rate. It's involved in some parasympathetic functions. That means slowing down your heart rate. It's involved in parasympathetic function, your salivary gland. Your parasympathetic function is rest and digest. As you can imagine, saliva is good for digestion. So you can see that the glossopharyngeal nerve is involved in that. And when you say, well, how is it involved in your heart rate? Look right here. These carotid bodies right here. If your blood pressure gets too high, it's sensed, well, the glossopharyngeal nerve carries that information to the brain, and then the brain sends signals back out to the heart that says slow down. If your blood pressure gets too low, this will sense that your blood pressure is too low, sends the signal to the brain, and the brain will send information out to your heart to speed up your heart rate, to raise your blood pressure. So the glossopharyngeal nerve is involved in that, and it has a parasympathetic function. That's 9. The vagus nerve goes right along with the glossopharyngeal, a big parasympathetic function. Matter of fact, 70% of all parasympathetic fibers are in the vagus nerve. And vagus means wandering. So the vagus nerve leaves the head and wanders throughout the body. And you already learned the vagus nerve that you saw in the esophagus in labs. You saw this already. And you saw the plexuses that it makes. So this is something you have already seen. 70% of the parasympathetic fibers are in the vagus nerve. All right, 11 is accessory or spinal accessory. I'm looking for it right here. Accessory nerve, also known as spinal accessory nerve. It's very unique in that you have these branches right here coming off the brainstem in the spine. You can see that it's not that it actually goes off the brainstem, and some of these branches come off the spine. See how it's called spinal cord right here? So you can see that, and this is the accessory or spinal accessory nerve. And then lastly, and by the way, these go to some muscles, your sternocleidomastoid muscle. All right, so they go to some muscles. And lastly, you have the hypoglossal nerve. Now, glossal means tongue. So as you can imagine, this hypoglossal nerve goes to tongue muscles, and you can trace it down through and see that it does. So the hypoglossal nerve hits your tongue. All right. So those are the cranial nerves. This table just goes back through everything we said. You can see that that it talks about the fissures and foramen that they go through. And back in 203, you had to remember that. For example, you had to remember that all 3 branches of the trigeminal nerve went through the superior orbital fissure, the foramen rotundum, and the foramen ovale. This is something you had to remember. So this table helps you with what the functions of the cranial nerves are. And again, you will learn this in lab as well. And that's about it, folks.